been a while since I read. I got a really bad migraine. And I was feeling like nauseous for over a week. So I haven't really felt like reading them until today. So we're near the end of this book. And let's go. Make sure. Okay. Effects of internal propaganda. I have tried to show elsewhere that propaganda has also become a necessity for the internal life of a democracy. What's up, Alta Vetum? I'm reading about propaganda. There's a section in here that talks about the church. Excuse me, sorry. Nowadays, the state is forced to define an official truth. This is a change of extreme seriousness. Even when the state is not motivated to do this for reasons of action or prestige, it is led to it when fulfilling its function of disseminating information. We have seen how the growth of information inevitably leads to the need for propaganda. This is truer in a democratic system than in any other. The public will accept news if it is arranged in a comprehensible system, and if it does not speak only to the intelligence, but to the heart. This means, precisely, that the public wants propaganda, and if the state does not wish to leave it to a party, which will then provide explanations for everything, i.e. the truth, it must itself make propaganda. Thus, the democratic state, even if it does not want to, becomes a propagandist state because of the need to dispense information. This entails a profound constitutional and ideological transformation. It is, in effect, a state that must proclaim an official, general, and explicit truth. The state can then no longer be objective or liberal, but is forced to bring to the over-informed people the corpus intelligentsia. It can no longer tolerate competition because the state that assumes this function no longer has the right to err. If it did, it would become the laughing stock of the citizenry, and its information would lose its effect, together with its propaganda. For the information it dispenses is believed only to the extent that its propaganda is believed. The state proclaimed truth must be all-embracing. The facts, which are the subjects of information, are becoming more and more complex and converging larger segments of life. Thus, the system into which they are arranged must cover all of life. Yeah, I'll post his name. You probably won't like him because he's a fan of Karl Marx. His biggest influences is like Marx, Karl Barth, and Kierkegaard, the philosopher. I don't know what Kierkegaard's first name is. Like Johann or some shit. I don't know. Or Sonya. I don't know what his fucking name is. Sonjar. Okay, so we're talking about the state proclaimed truth must be all embracing. The system into which they arrange must cover all life. This system must become a complete answer to all questions occurring in the citizen's conscience. It must therefore be general and all and all valid. It cannot be a philosophy or a metaphysical system, for such systems appeal to the intelligence of a minority. To describe the system, we must go back to an ancient primitive notion. What is this word? Etiological myth. The etiological myth. What the fuck is that? Etiological. Or etiology? Is that what the word is? What the hell is etiology? Is that, what the fuck is that? Say the word.
Etiology.
Etiology. The cause of a disease or abnormal condition. Oh. A branch of knowledge concerned with causes. Okay. The etiological myth is the myth of causes. Right? The study of causes, so the myth of causation. The myth of cause and effect. Okay. In fact, propaganda that corresponds to the body of information in a democratic state and aims at alleviating the troubles of its citizens must offer them an etiological myth. So it has to offer them a myth of like cause and effect. This would not be necessary if the citizens were to work only 3 or 4 hours a day and devote 4 hours daily to personal reflection and cultural pursuits. If all citizens had similar cultural level, if the society were in a state of equilibrium and not under the shadow of tomorrow's menace, and if the moral education of the citizens enabled them to master their passions and their egotism, but as these 4 conditions are not fulfilled, and as the volume of information grows very rapidly, we are forced to seek explanations and publicly parade them in accordance with popular demand. But the creation of the ideological myth leads to an obligation on the part of democracy to become religious. It can no longer be secular, but must create its religion. Besides, the creation of religion is one of the indispensable elements of effective propaganda. The content of this religion is of little importance. What matters is to satisfy the religious feelings of the masses. These feelings are used to integrate the masses into the national collective. We must not delude ourselves. When one speaks to us of massive democracy and democratic participation, these are only veiled terms that mean religion. Participation and unanimity have always been characteristics of religious societies, and only of religious societies. Thus, we return by another route to the problem of intolerance and the suppression of minorities. Let us recall another effect of such propaganda on democracy. An aristocratic category of men arises which has no common bond with democracy. The propagandist is a technician and a member of an aristocracy of technicians that establishes itself above the institutions of a democracy and acts outside its norms. Besides, the employment of propaganda leads the propagandist to cynicism, disbelief in values, non-submission to the law of numbers, doubts on the value of opinions, and contempt for the propagandee and the elected representatives. He knows how the public opinion is fashioned. The propagandist cannot subject himself to popular judgment and democracy. Finally, the propagandist is privy to all state secrets and acts at the same time to shape opinions. He really has a position of fundamental direction. The combination of these three elements makes the propagandist an aristocrat. It cannot be otherwise. Every democracy that launches propaganda creates in, and by such propaganda, its own enemy, an aristocracy that may destroy it. On the other hand, democracy is more and more conceived as a simple external political structure rather than as a complete concept of society, of behavior of man. This concept, this way of life, is tied to political democracy. Certain qualities on the part of the citizens are needed if democracy is to exist. It is easy to see that democracy wants to preserve this treasure that is its reason for, and its way of, existing. The government must maintain this way of life, without which democracy would be no longer possible. It thus becomes understandable and consistent that American prisoners repatriated from Korea were put in quarantine and subjected to mental and psychological treatment to detoxicate them of communism. They had to be given an American brainwashing, corresponding to the Chinese brainwashing, to make them fit to live once again according to the American way of life. But what is left of a man after that? We understand that democracy wants to control the mental and psychological state of the people who serve it, according to the notion of the security risk. Public servants cannot be permitted criminal or immoral conduct, alcoholism, dope addiction, or the like. They would be so far removed from their virtues a democratic citizen must exhibit that this exercise of control and the massive education by propaganda for a life congruous with democracy are easy to understand. The civic virtues created by the mass media will guarantee the maintenance of democracy, but what remains of liberty? I want to touch upon the other fact. I have tried to show in my book, which we're going to read next, The Technological Society, that modern technical instruments have their own weight and by themselves change political structures. Here I will ask only one question. What will be the effect on democracy of the use of TV for propaganda? One can see the first effects. TV brings us close to direct democracy. Congressmen and cabinet members become known. Their faces and utterances come to be recognized. They are brought closer to the voter. TV permits political contact to extend beyond election campaigns and informs the voters directly on a daily basis. More than that, TV could become a means of control over public servants. In his capacity as a TV viewer, the voter could verify what use his representatives make of the mandate with which he has entrusted them. Certain experiments conducted in the United States showed that when sessions of Congress were televised, they were much more dignified, serious, and efficient. Knowing that they were being observed, the congressmen took greater pains to fulfill their function. But one must not hope for much in this respect. There is little chance that governing bodies will accept this control. In reality, statesmen fully understand how to use it for their propaganda, and that is all. In fact, TV probably helped Eisenhower to win over Stevenson, the conservatives to win over Labor. The problem is first one of money, second of technical skill, but the use of TV as a democratic propaganda instrument entails the risk of a profound modification of democracy's style. There's footnotes. John Albig states correctly that this personification by TV corrodes and inhibits personal analytical reflection, standardizes personal images, and transmits a false reality. A televised session of Congress or the cabinet is not a true session, cannot be a true session. In such a televised session, the public sees the responsible government in action, but only as a political show performed by humanized stars who play a role. This seems an excellent description. Another footnote, this has been challenged by Angus Campbell in Television and the Election. Campbell, on the other hand, gives important indications of TV's decisive influence on elections. What can democracy use for TV propaganda? Democracy is not well adapted to that. So far, the technical instruments are in accord with democratic activities. Democracy speaks, and its entire being is expressed in words. This is not meant ironically. I believe that speech, in the most powerful and rhetorical sense, is one of the highest expressions of man. The instruments of propaganda, particularly press and radio, are made for words. Conversely, democratic propaganda made by motion pictures is weak. Democracy is not a visual form of government. The ceremony of the flame under the Arc de Triomphe, one of the most successful pictures, has little propaganda impact, even though it is spectacular. Actually, when democracy wants to use the film for propaganda, it can think of nothing but military parades, which cannot be presented too often. Propaganda needs both repetition and diversity. So far, democracy's inability to use motion pictures for its propaganda has not seemed serious, the films being a secondary arm. But it seems that TV is destined to become a principal arm, for it can totally mobilize the individual without demanding the slightest effort from him. TV reaches him at home, like radio, in his own setting, his private life. It asks no decision, no a priori participation, no move from him, such as going to a meeting. But it holds him completely and leaves him no possibility of engaging in other activities, whereas radio leaves a good part of the individual unoccupied. Moreover, TV has the shock effect of the picture, which is much greater than that of sound. But in order to use this remarkable arm, one must have something to show. A government official giving a speech is not a spectacle. Democracies have nothing to show that can compare with what is available to a dictatorship. If they do not want to be left behind in this domain, which would be extremely dangerous, they must find propaganda spectacles to televise. But nothing is better than massive ceremonies, popular marches, the Hitler Youth, and the Komoslavs, or an entire population enthusiastically assembled to build new ships or a new university, as in Yugoslavia. The exigencies of TV will lead democracy to engage in such hardly democratic demonstrations. We are now reaching the most important problem. Earlier I examined the psychological transformations that the individual undergoes when subjected to an intense and continuous propaganda. We have also seen that the existence of two contradictory propagandas is no solution at all, as in it no way leads to a democratic situation. The individual is not independent in the presence of two combatants between whom he must choose. He is not a spectator comparing two posters or a supreme arbiter when he decides in favor of the more honest and convincing one. To look at things this way is childish idealism. The individual is seized, manipulated, attacked from every angle. The combatants of two propaganda systems do not fight each other, but try to capture him. As a result, the individual suffers the most profound psychological influences and distortions. Man, modified in this fashion, demands simple solutions, catchwords, certainties, continuity, commitment, a clear and simple division of the world into good and evil, efficiency, and unity of thought. How many people do we see on YouTube doing that? Black and white, good and evil. Like, there's no nuance or like gray area. It's fucking simple-minded, surface level, no substance content, garbage, I would say. He cannot bear ambiguity. He cannot bear that the opponent should in any way, whatever, represent what is right or good. An additional effect of contradictory propagandas is that the individual will escape either into passivity or into total and unthinking support of one of the two sides. That's exactly what we have. People support, there's two sides. Both sides are begging, yeah, join my side. That side's evil. I'm the angel. They're the devil. And then like no one fucking thinks. They just pick one. And they don't like think about the situation at all. And they're fucking retarded. And that's basically all the audience of the people on YouTube. It is striking to see how this current, which is the point of departure of totalitarian parties, is beginning to take hold in the United States. These two different reactions, passivity or total commitment, are completely anti-democratic, but they are the consequences of some democratic types of propaganda. Here is the hub of the problem. Propaganda ruins not only democratic ideas, but also democratic behavior. The foundation of democracy, the very quality without which it cannot exist. The question is not to reject propaganda in the name of freedom of public opinion, which, as we well know, is never virginal, or in the name of freedom of individual opinion, which is formed of everything and nothing, but to reject it in the name of a very profound reality, the possibility of choice and differentiation, which is the fundamental characteristic of the individual in the democratic society. Don't be on the fence. Why not? I think it's good to be on the fence. Dude, if two groups are trying to get you to join, like Christians and atheists, you shouldn't join either of those groups because they're both going to fucking use you. Anytime a group is trying to get you to join it, you're going to get used. Believe that. Yeah, you want to get used? Go join a group. Go lube your asshole and join a group. Whatever the doctrine promulgated by propaganda, its psychological results are the same. To be sure, some doctrines are more coherent subject matter for propaganda than others, and lead to a more efficient and insistent propaganda. Other doctrines, Republican and Democratic, are rather paralyzing and less suitable. But the only result is the progressive weakening of the doctrine by propaganda. Conversely, what gives propaganda its destructive character is not the singleness of some propagated doctrine. It is the instrument of propaganda itself, although it acts differently according to whether it promulgates a closed system or a diversity of opinions. It has profound and destructive effects. What am I saying then? That propaganda can promulgate a democratic doctrine? Absolutely. That it can be used by a government elected by majority vote? Absolutely. But this gives us no guarantee that we are still dealing with But this gives us with no guarantee that we are still dealing with democracy. With the help of propaganda, one can disseminate democratic ideas as a credo and within the framework of a myth. With propaganda, one can lead citizens to the voting booth, where they seemingly elect their representatives. But if democracy corresponds to a certain type of human being, to a certain individual behavior, then propaganda destroys the point of departure of the life of a democracy, destroys its very foundations. It creates a man who is suited to a totalitarian society, who is not at ease except when integrated in the mass, who rejects critical judgment, choices and differentiations because he clings to clear certainties. Only the madman is absolutely sure. He is a man assimilated into uniform groups and wants it that way. They want to be little non-thinking group-minded bitches. So how do I reach someone who literally wants to be a pathetic, non-thinking, zero, mass-minded, garbage person? Like, they chose that. I can't be like, hey, you're garbage. They're gonna be like, yeah, I know. I like being garbage. What? Why? I know I have these divine qualities as made in the image of God, but I'd rather behave like a fucking animal. I'm lazy. This book is not propaganda. This book is a study on propaganda by an academic. What's wrong with drinking out of a jug? Because does that mean I'm trash? I'm a sinner. If you want to win, join the body of Christ and I'll see you in the kingdom. Win what? I'll see you in the kingdom with Charlie Sheen in the tiger blood. With the help of propaganda, one can do almost anything, but certainly not create the behavior of a free man, or, to a lesser degree, a democratic man. A man who lives in a democratic society and who is subjected to propaganda is being drained of the democratic content itself, of the style of democratic life, understanding of others, respect for minorities, re-examination of his own opinions, absence of dogmatism. The means employed to spread democratic ideas make the citizen psychologically a totalitarian man. The only difference between him and a Nazi is that he is a totalitarian man with democratic convictions. But those convictions do not change his behavior in the least. Such contradiction is in no way felt by the individual for whom democracy has become a myth and a set of democratic imperatives, merely stimuli that activate conditioned reflexes. The word democracy, having become a simple incitation, no longer has anything to do with democratic behavior, and the citizen can repeat indefinitely the sacred formulas of democracy while acting like a stormtrooper. See, what we believe doesn't match up with how we behave. Just look at Christians. Christians follow Christ and believe in the Bible, but then they act like fucking animals, right? So the people that create propaganda, they know that it doesn't matter what our personal convictions are, or what we believe, because they know that we're not consistent and that we'll behave in a way that contradicts what we actually believe to be true, right? So they don't care about our beliefs. They care about how we behave.
And since our behavior doesn't match our beliefs, the propagandist doesn't even give a fuck what you believe. Don't give a fuck. All democracy that is maintained or propagated through propaganda eventually scores this success, which is its own negation with regard to the individual and the truth. But can things really be that way? I said above that generally those who tend to deny propaganda's efficacy unconsciously hold a concept of the inalienable value of the individual. Those who accept its efficacy hold a materialistic concept. So far as I am concerned, I would much prefer to be able to assert that man is invulnerable, that few dangers exist for him in present-day society, that propaganda can do nothing to him. Unfortunately, the experiences of the last half-century are not encouraging in this respect. Moreover, it seems to me that the belief in propaganda's harmlessness and the spreading of this belief are ultimately detrimental to man. For man then is reassured in the face of attacks. He believes in his invulnerability and in the ineffectiveness of the attack, and his will to resist is greatly diminished. Why lose one's time and waste one's effort defending oneself against propaganda if propaganda is merely child's play and empty talk by ridiculous tyrants? Why exert one's mind, one's personality, one's strength of character if the tigers are paper tigers? If the methods are so absurd and obvious that even the biggest fool can manage to escape them? Why make discerning choices if propaganda, using only what is already there and leading me along roads I would have traveled without it, can in no way modify my actions? If the propagandee takes that attitude, he is in the most favorable position to obey without knowing it, to drift into the routine of propaganda while claiming to be supremely superior. The only true, serious attitude, serious because the danger of man's destruction by propaganda is serious, serious because no other attitude is truly responsible, and serious is to show people the extreme effectiveness of the weapon used against them, to rouse them to defend themselves by making them aware of their frailty and their vulnerability, instead of soothing them with the worst illusion, that of security that neither man's nature nor the techniques of propaganda permit him to possess. It is merely convenient to realize that the side of freedom and truth for man has not yet lost, but that it may well lose, and that in this game, propaganda is undoubtedly the most formidable power, acting in only one direction, toward the destruction of truth and freedom. No matter what the good intentions or the goodwill may be of those who manipulate it. Bam. I guess that would be a good place to stop. Shit. Got like 60 pages left. Like 50 pages left. Got about 50 pages left. Well, pick it up tomorrow. That was a good section. That was good shit. Food for thought. Alright, have a good day. Watch out for propaganda. It's dangerous to your freedoms.